Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas, and we have got the Monday, February 23rd Bracketology update. I've been doing this every Monday for the past few weeks, just trying to lead us up to Selection Sunday. I'll be going through my top four seeds based off all the action from last week and obviously the entire season. Now, I am recording this the morning before Houston and Kansas play. So if you see this on Monday, you're probably seeing it before that game starts. If you're seeing it on Tuesday or after, just know that what I'm talking about, this is before the result of Houston and Kansas. But let's just get straight into it. Let's dive into it. Let's go with the one seeds first. I have a new number one overall seed. A lot of people do. It is the Duke Blue Devils. They beat Michigan this past weekend, and this is by far the most impressive resume to me now. Their only two losses are in quad one, but you just look at their volume of wins, their quality of wins, and the fact that those two losses are to Texas Tech and UNC on the road, buzzer beater. This Duke team right now, they're looking at the best team in the country, and they had that best resume to back it up, so they're my number one overall seed. My second number one seed is Arizona. There was a big-time win for the Wildcats at Houston without Koa Pete. They're in the same spot as Duke, where their only two losses are quad one. Also, they get Koa Pete back, adding on to what we just saw them do to Houston on the road. That team is so good. Arizona is a one-seed lock just about for me at this point. And then here's Michigan. I had Michigan as my third overall number one seed now because like this Saturday, I moved them down, but it's not something I'm going to hold against them. They're obviously still a title favorite. They have a Q2 loss against Wisconsin, which is really the main thing that set them as three overall for me, behind Arizona, because that loss to Wisconsin isn't the same caliber as the losses for Duke and Arizona. But Michigan, still a number one seed, one of the best teams in the country. And I actually had a really hard time figuring out who I wanted to be my fourth number one seed this week because, Iowa State lost to BYU. Houston lost twice. UConn lost to Creighton in the midweek, then beat Villanova. I did go with UConn, though, as my fourth number one for right now. So, like I said, they lost to Creighton this week. They beat Villanova on Saturday. They're 10th in the net. I don't love this Huskies team, but I think based off of right now, after what happened last week, they're the most deserving final number one seed. I'd be surprised if UConn ends the year as a one because I just don't really know if I see them winning out and winning the Big East tournament. If they do that, they will be a one seed. But right now, I had them as my fourth one, even though I don't really love it just because I didn't really know who else to put there. But let me go to the two seeds now. And the top one there is Iowa State. The BYU loss from Saturday keeps them off the one line, even though the committee, when they released their top 16 seeds, they had them in there as that fourth one seed, which was kind of a surprise. But then, of course, that night, Iowa State went and lost on the road to BYU. They could easily swap with UConn over the next week. We'll see how it plays out. But for right now, Iowa State is my top two seed. Then the second two seed is Houston. The Arizona loss, it wasn't super inspiring just because you had them on your home court. You were obviously going to be up for that game. They were down, arguably their best player in Koa Pete, and they were in the game, but never really felt like they were about to, go take the lead and control that game and win. So it wasn't super inspiring, but they have a bounce back chance tonight at Kansas for Houston. You win that Kansas game, it's probably not a jump to the one line, but it definitely it keeps the door open for Houston to eventually move up to that one line. My third two seed is Purdue. This is a little higher for them than I had them in the past. They're sixth, and then they had a great win over Indiana on Saturday. They're holding on to that two line. And then my final two seed here is Florida. I think the Gators are one of the most undervalued teams in the country, which is kind of wild to say, given that they're either a 2 or a 3 seed everywhere you look. They should be top 10 when the AP poll comes out here in 20 minutes. But teams don't just go on the road in conference and do what they're doing. The consistency with how Florida is dominating teams on the road in the SEC by 20 is ridiculous. Because, yeah, the SEC is not as strong as it was last year, but, you saw Michigan. They were down by double digits to Northwestern. Duke, they lost that road game at UNC. Special circumstance, that's fine. But, these top teams in the country, also Arizona, UConn, teams like Iowa State and Houston, they don't go on the road and dominate. Florida's doing it. This Gators team is so dangerous, and they're relying on that front court that doesn't really have a day off. They're seventh in the net, so I got Florida as my final two seed. But moving on to the threes now, my top three seed is Illinois. They had a tough loss to UCLA on Saturday night late, which is why I have them down here as a 3 instead of a 2. But they get Michigan at home on Friday. And that game against Michigan is a 2-seed game for them. If they win that game against Michigan, based on what Florida and Purdue do, I'll jump Illinois up to a 2-seed. And based on what Purdue and Florida, what happens with them, I'll move one of them down to a 3. But Illinois, tough loss to UCLA, but you have a bounce back chance against Michigan on Friday. My second 3-seed is Nebraska. That game at Iowa, going into it, that was almost like a predetermined loss. That was the ultimate college basketball. Nebraska's going to lose this game situation, so it's fine. I don't really care about it. This win out. They don't have many hard games left. Hold steady as a 3. They're the 11th in net right now, but Nebraska should be good to win out, hold on to this 3 seed, and be in a great spot to win their first tournament game in school history. Now, my third number 3 seed is Kansas. This is people are gonna hear this and probably just think I'm just trying to be recency bias echo chamber. I prefer if Darren Peterson just opted out. I would. He's probably the best scorer in the sport, elite player. We know which team we're getting the rest of the way if he opted out. We would, because that Kansas team without Darren Peterson beat Arizona. And you're seeing the stuff with Peterson checking himself out of the game during the midweek. You saw the picture from Saturday of the whole team huddled up and he's at half court just walking over. It seems like there are problems where he's load managing, he's not playing all the time, he's taking himself out when he doesn't have to, and that's putting a rift between him and the team. I'd rather Darren Peterson just opted out because then I'd be more confident in what Kansas can be. But for right now, they are a 3 seed. A Houston win wouldn't make them a 2 for me necessarily, just off the bat, but it will be a big one at home. And then my final 3 seed here is Michigan State. They had 2 good wins over UCLA and Ohio State this past week. They're the 12th in the net. My biggest thing with Sparty is that Jeremy Fears, he's got to stop kicking people. He kicked someone on Ohio State in the nuts again this weekend. It didn't get called because it didn't look egregious, but he needs to stop being involved in these plays. Because if we get to the Sweet 16 and he elbows somebody and he's out of the game, Michigan State will lose. They'll lose. He needs to get himself under control so he doesn't either, cause a game-changing technical for Michigan State or get himself tossed out of a game in a critical moment. If he stays smart and gets everything figured out, I trust Izzo. I trust that team to make a run. If Fears is going to be this total wild card, you don't know when he's going to throw a kick or an elbow, it's a problem. But for right now, Michigan State is my last 3 seed. And then moving on to the 4s, my top 4 seed is Gonzaga. I may be underseeding Gonzaga. I'm lower than most people are. I just don't like it this year. I'm not quite there with them this year, but I am good with them being at the top of my 4 line. They've only lost 2 games, 27-2. They have I think they're 5th in the net, but that loss to Portland scares me. They just haven't quite looked as dominant as they have in the past. So Gonzaga for me is the top of my 4 line. My second 4 seed is Virginia. This is my first inclusion of the Who's in my bracketology. They're 16th in the net. They had 2 good wins this week versus Georgia Tech and that home win versus Miami, which is a really, really dangerous team. So Virginia for me is at the 4 line. Then I have Alabama. They're getting hot. They are finding a flow from deep. They beat LSU on Saturday. They beat Arkansas during the midweek. A good day on offense for Bama beats anybody. We've seen that the past few years when they've made these runs in the tournament because teams, even if they score 85, they lose by 15 to Bama because of how good Bama can be offensively. So I like the Crimson Tide as a 4. And then my last 4 seed is going to be Arkansas because I'm not holding the Bama game against them. They had 4 guys foul out. You had your freshman point guard playing 50 minutes and he scored 49. Like, this Arkansas team is so good. You have Darius Acuff leading the charge. I know what I have in John Calipari as a coach, so I still have Arkansas on my 4 line for right now. And I'm leaving out Texas Tech out of my top 16 seeds because it sucks so bad. But just losing JT Toppin, I do think really changes a lot. They played Kansas State on Saturday, so you didn't really see, the consequences of that exactly. But Texas Tech was already struggling a bit with depth. And even if they weren't struggling with depth, if you take away arguably the best player in the country from a basketball team, it's going to take a step back. So I love Texas Tech. I had them, I think, as high as a 3 just last week. The Toppin injury does a lot for me, and then not in a good way. So I'm leaving Texas Tech off my top 4, unfortunately. But that team is still pretty fun to watch, and I hope that they're able to rally around each other and have a good postseason. But that'll do it. Those are my top 16 seeds as of today, Monday, February 23rd. We are obviously getting the Kansas and Houston game tonight with a bunch of other games with seeding implications throughout the week. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. If you have been enjoying my basketball coverage, as well as my portal coverage and football offseason coverage, subscribe to me here. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be covering it all for you guys. I've been Will Thomas, and I will see you next time.